Could you do a video on the Taung? Alright, so the Taung species, they exist in both canon and legends. In canon, the Taung were native to the planet Coruscant. They left behind a very minor legacy, and that was Taung's Day, a weekday that was named after them, and the traditional Mandalorian Beskad sword, which was inspired by their weaponry. Additionally, the University of Coruscant had a student group called the Taung and Zell Society. It's a reference to their ancient conflict with the human Zell tribes. That's all we have in canon, but in legends, we have so much more. The Taung were a warrior race, known for their discipline, their resilience, and their battle-hardened society. They had grey skin, yellow eyes, and bony ridges on their skulls. These guys were naturally strong and well adapted to the hardships of war. Their sharp claws and their very hardened physiology gave them that edge in combat. Taung society was deeply rooted in warfare. They lived in nomadic clans, and each of them were led by experienced warriors that had proven themselves in battle. These veterans were honoured as chieftains, while ultimate authority rested with Mandalore, a title that meant sole ruler. Now, the Taung language, it later evolved into Mandoa, which did become the common tongue of the Mandalorians. Now, for the Taung, war was more than just survival, it was a spiritual journey. They worshipped Kad Haranga, which was a god of destruction and change, while rejecting Arasum, which was a god of stagnation. This belief system fueled their relentless pursuits for conquest, with ritualistic duels and brutal combat trials, all shaping their way of life. But despite this aggression, they weren't primitive. They embraced advanced technology, often claiming advanced weaponry and armor from their fallen opponents. Mandalorian armor itself originated from their culture, with early helmets that modeled after their facial features. Now, the Taung once upon a time were one of Coruscant's most dominant species, warring for centuries against the Zell. The Zell were a coalition of early human tribes. A volcanic eruption had devastated the Zell stronghold, shrouding Coruscant in ash for 2 years. The Taung had seen this as destiny, so they named themselves Da Werda Verda, meaning warriors of the shadow. Despite all of this, the Zell ultimately drove the Taung off the planet Coruscant. Some of them had fled to the unknown regions, but most of them settled on the planet Room in the Outer Rim. There, Mandalore I had united them, leading them to an uncharted world teeming with giant mythosaurs. Conquering the beast, they renamed the planet Mandayame, which of course was Mandalore. They no longer identified as Taung, they then became Mandoyade, Mandalorians, and this went on to forge a new warrior culture. Now, the Mandalorians had expanded aggressively, wiping out entire species. However, they had integrated the Mandalorian giants into their ranks. This is an early example of their tradition of adopting other strong warriors from other cultures. But by the time of the Great Sith War, the Taung were still leading the Mandalorians. Mandalore the Indomitable allied with the fallen Ulic Keldroma and the Sith Lord Exar Kun. They would launch attacks on Coruscant before ultimately failing. His successor, Mandalore the Ultimate, they expanded their forces, welcoming all warriors of all species, then shifting the Mandalorian identity from race to culture. Under his leadership, they waged the Mandalorian Wars against the Republic. However, the Mandalorians, they were defeated by the Jedi Knight Revan at Malachor 5. The Mandalorians, they were shattered, and the few remaining Taung were believed to have perished. Their species nearly extinct, Mandalorian identity became fully independent of Taung lineage. Rumors may have suggested that the Taung could have survived by the time of the Cold War, with the Warriors of Shadow battling a mysterious religious order in the unknown regions. The wreckage of this conflict remains one of the last traces of their existence. But even though the Taung had vanished, naturally their legacy had endured. The warrior culture that they built had completely outlived them, shaping the Mandalorian identity across species and generations. Even after the Taung was gone, Mandalorians continued to honor their traditions, ensuring that their way of life had never faded. And that's the Taungs. Hope it helped.